There are transfers in football that shock fans. There are transfers that surprise the media. And then there's what Luis Figo did in the summer of 2000, a move so explosive, so unthinkable that it nearly tore Spanish football apart at the seams. This is the story of how one of Barcelona's most beloved heroes became the most hated man in Catalonia overnight, how a transfer that seemed impossible actually happened, and how one player's decision created a rivalry so intense that it still echoes through El Clasico today. But to understand the depths of this betrayal, we need to go back to where it all began. Luis Figo didn't just play for Barcelona, he embodied everything the club stood for. When he arrived at the Camp Nou in 1995 from Sporting Lisbon, Barcelona wasn't just signing a talented winger, they were getting a player who would define an era. At 22 years old, Figo possessed a rare combination of technical brilliance and physical presence. His dribbling could leave defenders dizzy. His crosses were surgical. His work rate was relentless. Within months, he wasn't just playing for Barcelona, he was Barcelona. The Catalan fans saw in Figo something special. Here was a player who understood what it meant to wear the Blaugrana. He learned the language, he embraced the culture. He spoke about Barcelona with genuine passion, calling it more than a club without the hollow ring that phrase often carries when spoken by outsiders. For 5 years, Figo was untouchable. He helped Barcelona win back-to-back La Liga titles in 1997 and 1998. He was named FIFA World Player of the Year in 2001 for his performances. He became captain of the team. Children across Catalonia wore shirts with his name on the back. Adults tattooed his number on their skin. One Barcelona supporter would later tell reporters, "Figo was family. You don't betray family." But in the world of elite football, loyalty is a luxury few can afford. And behind the scenes, forces were already in motion that would change everything. The year 2000 was an election year at Real Madrid, and the club's presidency was up for grabs. Real Madrid, despite being one of the most successful clubs in history, was going through a rough patch. Barcelona had dominated Spanish football in the late 1990s. The pressure at the Bernabeu was mounting. The fans wanted change. They wanted someone who could restore Real Madrid to its former glory. Enter Florentino Perez, a construction magnate with deep pockets and even deeper ambitions. Perez wasn't a traditional football man. He was a businessman, cold and calculating, who saw Real Madrid not just as a sports club, but as a global brand that needed repositioning. He had lost a presidential election in 1995, but he wasn't going to lose again. His campaign promise was audacious to the point of seeming delusional. If elected, he would sign Luis Figo from Barcelona. Not just any Barcelona player, their captain, their best player, their symbol. The reaction across Spain was immediate and uniform. Impossible. Football journalists laughed it off. Barcelona fans dismissed it as a desperate publicity stunt. Even Real Madrid supporters thought Betis had lost his mind. You didn't sign a player directly from Barcelona to Real Madrid. It simply wasn't done. Not someone like Figo, not the captain. There had been transfers between the two clubs before, of course, but they were rare, usually involving players past their prime or those who had fallen out of favor. The last truly significant transfer from Barcelona to Real Madrid had been Bernd Schuster in 1988, and even that had caused riots. But Figo? Impossible. Except Betis wasn't bluffing. What Barcelona fans didn't know, what nobody knew, was that Perez had already made contact with Figo's agent. In the shadows of the presidential campaign, a deal was being structured. Not a transfer agreement, not yet, but something far more clever. A pre-contract with a massive clause. If Perez won the election and Figo refused to join Real Madrid, the player would have to pay Perez $30 million out of his own pocket. $30 million. Figo signed it. Why would he do such a thing? The answer depends on who you ask. Some say he never believed Perez would actually win. Others claim he was assured it was just a formality, a way to help Perez's campaign without any real consequences. Still others whisper that Figo's relationship with Barcelona's board had already started to fracture over contract disputes. But the most likely explanation? Figo signed because he was convinced there was no way it would ever come to this. Perez was the underdog, the outsider, the businessman with crazy ideas. On July 16, 2000, Florentino Perez won the Real Madrid presidential election, and suddenly Luis Figo had a choice to make: betray Barcelona or pay $30 million. The news broke like a bomb. On July 24, 2000, just 8 days after Perez's election, Luis Figo, captain of Barcelona, idol of Catalunya, symbol of everything the club represented, signed for Real Madrid for a then world record fee of $62 million. The reaction was immediate and volcanic. In Barcelona, there was shock, disbelief, then rage, pure, unfiltered rage. Fans gathered outside the Camp Nou, burning Figo jerseys in massive bonfires. His pictures were torn down from walls across the city. The newspaper stands that had celebrated him for 5 years now featured his face crossed out, marked with words too harsh to repeat. One Barcelona supporter set fire to an effigy of Figo that hung from a lamppost. The police had to be called in to control the crowds. This wasn't just anger at a player leaving for a bigger contract. This was something deeper, something personal. Figo hadn't just left Barcelona. He had joined the enemy, the one club that Barcelona fans hated above all others, the club that represented everything they stood against. It was, in the eyes of Catalan supporters, the ultimate betrayal. Former Barcelona president Joan Gaspat, who had lost the Figo deal, looked devastated at the press conference announcing the departure. He said, "We did everything we could," his voice hollow. But everyone knew the truth. Barcelona had been outmaneuvered, outsmarted, humiliated on the world stage. Figo himself tried to explain. He claimed he had no choice, that the clause was too massive, that he never intended for it to come to this. "I am not a traitor," he would insist in interviews. "I had a contract. I had obligations." But his words fell on deaf ears. To Barcelona fans, there were no acceptable explanations. There was only betrayal. If Figo thought the worst was behind him, he was catastrophically wrong. The first time Real Madrid visited the Camp Nou after the transfer, October 21, 2000, Barcelona wasn't just preparing for a football match, they were preparing for war. The atmosphere inside the stadium that day was unlike anything seen in modern football. This wasn't the usual intense rivalry of a Clasico. This was personal. This was vendetta. From the moment Figo stepped onto the pitch for warm-ups, the abuse started. 90,000 people, 90,000, unleashing their fury on one man. The whistles were so loud, they could be heard blocks away from the stadium. Every time Figo touched the ball, the volume somehow increased. But it wasn't just noise. Objects began raining down from the stands. Coins, bottles, lighters, stones. Each time Figo approached to take a corner kick, security personnel would have to clear debris from around him. The linesmen stood nervously, constantly looking up at the stands, ready to duck. Barcelona's players weren't much friendlier. Tackles flew in hard and late. Words were exchanged that cameras couldn't capture. These were Figo's former teammates, players he had celebrated championships with, shared dressing rooms with, called friends. Now they looked at him with something between disgust and hatred. Real Madrid won that match 2-0, but Figo looked haunted throughout. Every touch was rushed, every pass hurried. This wasn't the smooth, confident playmaker who had graced the Camp Nou for 5 years. This was a man under siege, and it would only get worse. The 2002 El Clasico at the Camp Nou was where things crossed from hostile into genuinely disturbing territory. Barcelona fans had 2 years to stew in their anger, 2 years to watch Figo thrive at Real Madrid, helping them win La Liga and the Champions League, 2 years to plan their revenge. When Figo approached to take a corner kick in the 69th minute, something flew out of the stands that made the entire stadium gasp. A pig's head. It landed near Figo with a sickening thud, rolling slightly before coming to rest just a few feet from where he stood. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Players from both teams stared in shock. The referee looked uncertain how to proceed. Television commentators struggled to find words. The symbolism was deliberate and cruel. In many cultures, calling someone a pig implies they are dirty, traitorous, unworthy of respect. The message couldn't have been clearer. You are less than human to us. Figo barely reacted. His face remained impassive, though those close enough said they saw his jaw tighten. He waited for officials to remove the object, then took the corner kick as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. The incident made headlines around the world. It became one of the defining images of football's darker side, the moment when passion crossed into something uglier. UEFA launched an investigation. Barcelona was fined, but the damage to the rivalry, to any hope of reconciliation between Figo and his former fans, was permanent. While Barcelona fans spiraled deeper into their hatred, Figo was busy justifying Perez's astronomical investment. At Real Madrid, Figo became the cornerstone of the Galacticos policy, Perez's strategy of signing one world-class player every summer to build both a super team and a global brand. Figo was the first. Zinedine Zidane would follow in 2001, Ronaldo in 2002, David Beckham in 2003. And Figo delivered. In his first season, he helped Real Madrid win La Liga, ending Barcelona's domestic dominance. In 2002, he was instrumental in Real Madrid's Champions League triumph, their 9th European Cup. His performances on the pitch were exceptional. The same dribbling wizardry, the same precision crossing, the same work rate that had made him a Barcelona legend. From a purely footballing perspective, the transfer was a massive success. Real Madrid got exactly what they paid for, a world-class player in his prime who helped deliver trophies. But the cost to Figo himself was immeasurable. Every single time Real Madrid played Barcelona, home or away, Figo was subjected to treatment no other player received. The abuse never stopped, never diminished. If anything, it intensified as the years went on. Each trophy Real Madrid won seemed to deepen the wound for Barcelona supporters. Figo couldn't walk the streets of Barcelona without security. Restaurants that had welcomed him as a hero now refused him service. He received death threats regularly. His family was harassed. One report claims someone tried to run his car off the road. People ask me if I regret the move, Figo said in a rare candid interview years later. How can I regret it? I won everything at Real Madrid. But would I do it again knowing what I know now? He paused. I honestly don't know.